dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know.
We made a thing.
We made a thing.
And we made it better.
Yeah, this is our part 2, a follow-up, a sequel even to one of our favorite episodes, one of the big ones. This is, by the way, Dungeon Master of Done. I'm Rob.
I'm Matt. And if you're curious to where we're coming from, a link at the very top of the description to part 1 of this episode, where we, from scratch, made a one-shot Dungeons & Dragons adventure.
It's the Celestial Job, and as you might guess by the title, our idea going into it was to make a D&D heist, which is sort of interesting given the timing, since I think yesterday or the day before, Wizards Official has actually released a heist adventure of their own, which Matt and I haven't had a chance to look at, but I am confident in saying that it is inferior. Because
ours is better in every way. It has 1,000% more mushrooms, 5,000% more celestials, 2,000% more jobs.
Definitely more jobs. So many more jobs. Anyway, so we gamed out this one shot.
The jobs, folks.
And
they're here.
Matt and I both, we wrote it up, and then Matt and I both ran it with in-person groups. And this is a good chance for us to talk a little bit about playtesting, which I think is one of the most poorly understood and also possibly one of the most poorly executed parts of the whole game design process across the board. Matt, do you have like a sort of a particular philosophy about this?
Yeah, I do. I came from a Dungeons & Dragons group where every year before a local gaming con, we would all get together and block off a month or two of our gaming time so we could all play test each other's adventures that people were running at the convention. And that works really well. If you're running or if you're creating something for publication, you've got to play it for people as many times as you can. And playing something to refine it for publication is maybe a little different than just running a game for fun with your friends.
It really helps to highlight the problems and the potential pitfalls in a one-shot or in a module if you playtest it as many times as possible. You're going to find, in my experience, the same things keep coming up. I've done this a few times too. I've gone to cons and run the same game 3 times or 2 times and compared, and you'd be surprised how many things are the same and how many things are different, and often how easy it is for your players to find the obvious errors in what you think is a otherwise well-designed game. Matt and I will talk about... I have a particular point regarding the Celestial Job that came up in both of our games, but it's you think you have a good handle on things, but you know, what is that military saying? No good plan survives contact with the enemy, or something like that. Same so with your one shot surviving contact with your players.
Your players are the best people to spot flaws or areas of improvement in anything you've created, whether it's a class, a new monster, but in particular something as complicated as many moving parts as a full adventure scenario. I think while playtesting, you as the dungeon master have a little bit of a different mindset. Not that you should run things that differently, but you want to do basically 2 very simple things. One is keep notes about how things are going so you can remember later, not just sort of notes for a plot like you would for adventure, but notes on, you know, whether this seems like a fun or challenging or exciting encounter. And then the easiest thing is that after you're done playing is to just stop and have as frank of a conversation as your players are willing to have about what they liked and what they didn't like. Right? Do a little focus marketing group.
This is the chance, or this is the time when you want to feel empowered and comfortable to change things as well. There's no reason, especially if this is just something you've never tested before and something obviously isn't working, there's no reason to adhere to your regular plan, even more so than you might normally. You should, feel empowered and feel comfortable just making changes on the fly as you see fit to improve the game and to make the one shot more impactful and more successful. It's something that you should do all the time, but you should definitely do when you're playtesting.
Yeah, if you have an idea of something to spice something up in media res, plop it in there, right? The worst thing that can go wrong is that it fails, and then that in fact wasn't a good idea. But, if you're an experienced dungeon master, you're going to find that your instincts are going to really help you out in these kind of cases.
Yeah, and this is also something that will help you become a better DM and help you in all of your dungeon mastering is learning how to recognize quickly what isn't working and what is. I ran a Savage Worlds one shot 3 times a couple of years ago, and I had a whole subplot that I thought was very interesting that I immediately recognized in the first game was like a huge boondoggle and waste of time, and just cut it completely. And it turned out that meant the game lasted exactly as long as it was supposed to, and not an hour or more, and everybody had a good time. I'm really glad that I did not decide to keep that in, because that was hard enough to run as it was. But this is a great thing for everybody to do to practice. If you can get your players on board with trying either some content that you have written or that is not well play tested, it's a great way to to beef up your DMing chops and to get a feel for how to adapt and make changes on the fly.
Excellent. And so you, our wonderful, beautiful listeners, are along for the ride as we take the adventure that we came up with on this very podcast, go over the results of our 2 play tests and refine it and beef it up to slide it out for publishing. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll make sure
Rob,
this will be available to everybody once we're done with it, and I want you to encourage you all to take it and also play test it and tell us what sucks about it. But let's go over the nuts and bolts, Matt.
So, Rob, for people who listened to our original episode, but it's been a month or 2, what was the Celestial job? What's the basic idea of this Dungeons and Dragons 3 to 4 hour adventure?
The core of the job is, or the adventure is, that the players are to execute a heist. And the person who is hiring them, assigning them this task, is a representative of the Lady of Pain from Sigil. We wrote this shortly after... Actually, there wasn't really any Sigil-related content. We were just talking about Sigil.
We just thought there was going to... There's Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes,
that's right. There's
which has a bunch
Mordenkainen's,
of planar
we
stuff.
thought we were going to see some Sigil-related content, and there was a bit.
We were wrong.
But there was a bit, but not as much as we would have liked. Though we did use some stuff from Mordenkainen's. We'll talk about that in a bit. But anyway, so we wanted this to be an introductory adventure to Sigil, but also a heist and a bunch of other things. And so the players are asked to acquire an object from Mount Celestia. And we thought this would be a fun way to either provide chaotic or evil or neutral parties, or just, your standard, somebody besides your standard good guy adventurers, something to do. Though it can work for parties of any alignment. And that's really the core of it. There's a bunch of things that get in the way, but the core, the crux of the arc is that they're to go to Mount Celestia and they're to acquire an object, the soul of a powerful mortal who can plane shift, and ideally, or they're supposed to give it to the Lady of Pain of Sigil, for which they'll be greatly rewarded. But of course,
along the way,
there are complications. Other parties are interested in this powerful object, and hijinks ensue.
Excellent. I think that's a pretty good summary. So we both took our rough outline. Basically, I went into playing this with little more than what we had come up with in that 1 hour that we played. I added some stats to a couple things that we didn't, of course, have time to create stats for in the podcast, but the outline we came up with was basically all I had as I sat down to run this adventure for, I think I had 5 players. I had 4 players. I had 1 join who was running late, who joined after an hour. So I ran for a party of 5 third-level characters.
I had the benefit of Matt's experience and his notes, though I didn't have a whole lot of extra written material, and I changed a lot of what he gave me, but I did have the benefit of his experience. I ran it for 4 players, 4 third-level players.
how should we do this? Should we talk about what worked and what was really fun for our players based on their feedback? What kind of stuff we added, and then we can talk about what didn't work?
Well,
what order are we gonna do it?
One of the things that I think was most educational and interesting for us that I think we should talk about is the beginning. I mean, obviously we should start there, and we should talk about what we had planned and what we ended up doing and how they differed, if that makes sense. So
starting is always like the hardest thing for me.
Right, it is. And so Matt and I, the criticism that Matt and I both received from our groups is that the beginning was slow. And this is interesting because I heard that from Matt's group and severely truncated the beginning, and it was still slow. So initially we had planned to have the players start in the prime material plane in a tavern where they are approached by a representative of the Lady of Pain who would bring them to Sigil. Right? This makes sense.
They give them the job offer.
This makes sense because it can work for a party that's already on the prime material, that's running a normal campaign, and you want to crank it up a notch and take them to Sigil and throw them into the multiverse. So that made sense,
Bam.
But as Matt found out, it adds a lot of time. The other thing that Matt did, and this can work with an experienced group, but he had them make characters. I had pre-mades, and I recommend that if you do run this, you either, if you have an experienced group, have them make characters ahead of time and run them by you, or you just give them pre-mades. Because it is, I ran this in almost exactly 3 hours, which is a very excellent time for a one-shot. But if you add a whole lot more, then it can run a lot longer. So that was the one thing.
Yeah, mine was more like 4.
That was the one thing that we learned about the beginning, and neither of us anticipated that. I mean, it didn't feel especially slow, but I think a lot happens in the second half to 2/3 of the adventure that it makes the beginning feel slow.
Players are usually right? The first part of the adventure was slow, but you do have to remember that it is okay for an adventure to ramp up. You can imagine a curved line heading up in tension, right? Like a good movie. And if it starts off all craziness and the craziness never stops, you don't sort of get that same feel. However, we both did decide that, the adventure needs to have a little more action in the beginning.
The one thing, so I agree with Matt. I like the beginning and I want to keep most of it, though there's probably a way to increase the time. I think we both gave the players an option to shop, which I think was a mistake because there's not really anything to shop for and it's a waste of time. Unfortunately, that shopping moment is when they meet a critical character and also a fun character, Amaris and his urchin bidding doer. What's the kid's name?
Let's see. I think we called him Dareth. So
Dareth.
one thing we did change is we moved. So if you remember our original episode, the players are stealing a valuable soul from Mount Celestia. Basically, 2 other important parties want it: the lawful evil devils of the 9 hells and the chaotic evil demons of the abyss. And the devils basically use a little local. We decided to add in the devils use a little local guide in Sigil as a plant to get them an audience with the players, to tell them that, hey, this is in fact a really important item. And if you give it to us, we can basically double your offer that the Lady of Pain is giving us.
Right. And also it's a fun way to sort of set the scene and theme of Sigil. Planescape. We had Dareth be a little cockney urchin boy who leads you to his...
Oh, hello, governor. All right. And he uses lots of Burks and Bloods and Bashers and other sling
Sigil
from
slaying
Sigil.
Cagers and whatnot.
The cant.
So I like Dareth, and I would like him to stay in the campaign, but there may be a better way to have him approach the characters. Rather than encountering them as a guide or while they're shopping. But generally, I'm fine with that part of the adventure. Like we discussed before, it is a little slow, but it is okay for the adventure to ramp up. So a little room for, I think, flexibility and innovation there if you are running this. But I think it's an important part, and I really like all of the 3 parties, how different they are, and how they all have their own interest in this particular item. And I definitely want that to stay. It's just a question of how to introduce it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways that we might go in our revision here. We could, if we wanted to kill two birds with one stone, sort of ramp things up and have the players be attacked by sigil pickpockets or something as they stumble around, the city's mean streets, kind of as clueless primes. But I'm worried of bogging down the adventure too much with too many encounters. But that would solve the no action in the first part. And we could have our little young boy, Cockney kid Dareth be the person to be like, hey, you guys, no wonder you got marked. You went down the wrong alley, and I can guide you to where your portal's supposed to be. Something like that.
I like the idea. Rather than, I also agree that probably we're getting into too many encounter territory. But what if instead of, being attacked, it's a chase? There are rules for chases that are very rarely used in 5th edition and in other editions, and might be a good opportunity to somebody nicks their mobile and they gotta chase him down, and maybe Dareth helps him out, maybe they do catch him, but that might be a good way to ramp up the action, introduce the mean streets of Sigil, and also stick to the general idea of that beginning part.
Ooh, I definitely like the idea of a chase. You could have to give the players full agency. One of the things they have is they have a portal key that will get them to Mount Celestia. Porcelain doll of a monk with no arms or no legs that she gives them that will let them open a portal to Mount Celestia in a certain part of the city. You could have some thieves try and steal that from them. If they fail, the PCs scare them off. If they succeed, it sort of starts a chase. Again, the risk we run here is if the players completely fail at the chase right, and they lose their portal key, the adventure is now completely stopped.
Right. That could, I would say that one thing that we could do is that if they do lose their portal key, then that instead of Dareth helping them out, Dareth and Amaris offer them a second portal key, and this is
free of charge.
And this is when they make the offer, to purchase to pay them for the object instead of the Lady of Pain, and maybe there can be strings attached or not, or it's one of those things where you think you're getting something for free from the devil, but actually there's a
perfect devil behavior.
Yes.
And I want to talk about how my players enjoyed this scene. I think this is where the adventure really, what we've written so far really takes off, right? So the players are about to go to Mount Celestia, and this devil, he looks just like a human. He's a Cambion devil. He's using the Alter Self spell, and he's got a great coat that the inner lining of is a modified bag of holding. I don't think we had this in our original notes, but instead of just offering them more money for the return of things, which is kind of, think of your kindergartners and offering them a marshmallow a minute later. Players are kind of like that. He shows them he has a bunch of powerful magic weapons, and as a token of his goodwill, just for considering the offer, he gives one of those magic weapons to sort of the player who seemed most on, or the character that seemed most on its side. And for my players, that one player got a magic weapon and no one else did, definitely began to sow, one, divisions in the group, but two, made a lot of the players be like, listen, we got to give this to this we got to give this back to this guy so that we can get our magic weapons too. Because there's so much jealousy, which I think for a devil is perfect, right?
I also had intended to, I took this from Matt's game. I had his notes, but my players were rightfully so distrustful of the creepy guy in the alley and did not take any of his free magic weapons.
And I think that's fine. If your players are offered a free magic weapon, and as we've written it, and I think this is the best way to run it, there are no strings attached. He is just giving this to them because he thinks this is the best way to get the players to give him
and it is perfect devil behavior, and it's a great way to, again, what I really enjoy about the adventure that we ended up writing is that it introduces the factions in the multiverse war. What is it called? The Eternal War, the Blood War. That's what it is. I think really well. Blood War. I think it does a really good job of showing their motivations and their strategies, and it sets the players up if they want to go into a larger multiverse adventure, who they'll be dealing with. Anyway, so let's move on to the next part. But I liked this. I want to keep it. It needs a little tweaking, I think, but generally it's a good way. So anyway, so they're given this key. They're given instructions from. I called my guy Francis Oceanus, nice. Advocate of the Lady of Pain, and he tells them where to go, and so they pop over to Mount Celestia, which is your standard heavenly place, clouds and beautiful gardens, pearly gates, where they are met with a particular challenge. And so one thing happened here that I think was really interesting that happened in both of our games. So if you listen to the original episode, we have set up that this Guru Kabir, right?
Kabir.
Yep. Achieved a level of enlightenment that makes his soul particularly attractive to people engaging in the Blood War, people in the multiverse, and that he has a lot of followers and adherents, and that many of them have come to Mount Celestia to try to be with him or to seek his wisdom, but they are on the outside.
Right. They're outside the pearly gates.
As I understand it, neither of our groups bit on this particular piece of information. Is that right,
yes.
Matt? Yeah.
Yeah, that I described the scene of, dozens of monk-like people, sort of hanging out, dancing, meditating, waiting for the gates to open. And my players were not interested in talking to them.
My players were also not interested in talking to them. They did talk to them, but they didn't really ask the right questions, and they didn't really pick up on. They didn't try to find out more. They just talked to them and then moved on to the gatekeeper. So I'm not sure if there's anything that we need to change about this, but maybe there's a way to drop a hint that this is. I guess it's not really critical to the adventure. It's just useful contextual information, I suppose.
Right. If the players do talk to them and do investigate what's going on, they'll be able to make a more accurate decision as to what they want to do at the end of the adventure. And I say, since both of our players didn't bid on this, I'm not completely convinced this needs to be trashed or rewritten. I think it just needs to be front loaded more.
Yeah, that's what I think so too. Yeah.
Both by the devil and by Francis Oceanus, they're looking for a lotus flower. I would say in your, if you can imagine us writing this up as an adventure, in the block text description of these petitioners, they're all wearing giant gold chains depicting a golden lotus, like holy symbol.
Right.
Like,
or
and if the players don't pick up on that, then
it's,
or it's
fuck 'em. Emblazoned on their robes or something like that. I tried to sort of.
Yeah. Oh, their robes are basically lotuses too.
Right. I tried to play my cards close to my chest and expected that my players would investigate and try to find out more. But my gut instinct is to always keep things behind, to play up the mystery. And sometimes that can work, but in an adventure this brief, maybe it is better to just sort of put it out there so that it can't be missed. Again, this isn't critical, but I think it is valuable and interesting, and it provides context for the final decision. So your players should at least want to talk to these monks, find out why they're there, and learn a little bit about the Guru Kabir before they make the decision about what to do with his soul.
And this sort of thing, and Rob and I were talking about earlier, things you come up with on the fly, is I realized when we got to this, one thing we didn't think through. So the players port key over to the gates of Mount Celestia, and I realized, why are the gates closed? Like, why can't good souls enter this part of heaven at the moment? And I realized I needed a reason for that. I sort of ad-libbed that the gatekeeper, who we had talked about earlier in the adventure, is basically assigned to guard these gates and keep them closed because there's some glitches in the system of this part of Mount Celestia. There's a minor infection. And this can play into the plot later. Did you do anything here as to why the gates were closed, Rob?
I didn't. I remembered that from your notes, and I sort of left it open. My players ended up sort of brute forcing their way past the gatekeeper, and so
do tell.
Well, when I say brute forcing, I mean they got a critical success on their bluff roll and a really, really good, a very convincing and well role-played lie. And so I sort of like let them skip the part where the gatekeeper, because I was ready, the gatekeeper was stonewalling them, and I expected them to sort of like ask some questions, but rather than asking questions, one of my players immediately went for, you know, their deception roll and started spinning a tall tale about being sent to deal with something or other, which played into what you had done about the corruption, which I wasn't entirely sure I was going to use, but it played into the lie, and so I was like, you know what, that's fine. There's some fungus, and the gatekeeper believes you, and you rolled a natural 20, so sure, go on in.
So here's the thing that happened in my game is my players were terrible at deception. And but they did really love the gatekeeper. I made the gatekeeper, instead of a kotal, a liland, so like half human, half feathered serpent. And I went straight with the like very vain, very beautiful. My players loved this NPC, right? They loved how shitty he was and that he was a bored celestial who didn't like his job. And, you know, they asked him, you know, like, why are you so unhappy here? Like, and he's like, well, as soon as this like infection is cleared up, I can go back to like my normal job of like playing the harp, and there'll be no more reason for me to be here. And I'm really unhappy. And they tried to lie to him. They found out they couldn't, but they flattered him and were like, we will fix this problem for you if you let us in. And for this very vain celestial, that is more than enough reason for the players to get inside. So they just promised the guy that, yeah, we'll clean up this infection that has caused you to have to shut the gates of this part of Celestia.
Yeah, I described mine as a androgynous Azamar, you know, cold, imperious, Tilda Swinton looking type. And
Tilda Swinton.
But yeah, again, rather than some of my players are new. They were also very excited and sort of like plowing through stuff. And so rather than ask a lot of questions and proceed carefully, they went immediately for a ballsy deception check, which they, again, to my surprise, succeeded masterfully on. And yeah, so the gatekeeper, you can be played a lot of ways. I would, much like the docent, I would say have fun with it. Pick some sort of celestial that's interesting and however you want to approach it. And then, you know, as we wrote it, there are a lot of different ways for them to get in to Mount Celestia, and they should get in. And if they flounder, you know, come up with a reason for them to get inside, but make them work for it, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think keeping a Githzerai monk who is a seeker there that they can immediately go talk to because he stands out. But he can be there to help the players out if they flounder, right? He can show up. And so I wouldn't front load him. I would front load the gatekeeper and the petitioners, but he can be there to help the players out if they flounder.
Yeah, the monks are there to make sure they get inside. Again, but they have to actually make use of that, but that's what they're there for.
And then, Rob, you were absolutely correct in that it's too much to add in a scene of distracting, getting the players distracted by literal paradise. If in our final version we cut that out, I am okay with that. Congratulations, you were right. God damn.
Wait, was I? I don't remember. Did I object to this in the original episode?
You did.
Okay. I did describe Paradise a little bit, and they were mildly distracted, but I did not lean on it very much. Yeah,
I think that's exactly where it should be left. One thing that, again, I added at the 11th hour is so the players are going to the Acropolis of Enlightenment, where, you know, the Soul Lotus is kept. And the thing I added was that part of the hillside is covered in foul-smelling mushrooms that are being swarmed over by a perfect line of celestial bees that are like repairing the texture of heaven itself. The players love this. They immediately, instead of going into the Acropolis, started messing with the mushrooms. An incredibly, chaotic player ate one of the mushrooms, which I decided would give him a boon straight from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes from Zugmoti, the Demon Lord, and allowed Zugmoti's agents to like speak through him. But I thought it was a good addition to show players that, something is wrong here.
I stole this wholesale from you, Matt. I liked it a lot. I also thought it was I thought it was good because it introduces Zugmoti early on, so that he doesn't just come in like at the 11th hour right before they encounter the Golden Lotus to like offer them one more thing. It's good foreshadowing. It also gave me a chance for a fun and easy encounter for them to, showcase their combat prowess. I had them fight fungal, what are they called? Dretches, yes. Which was just a handful of them, which was a nice, easy warm-up fight, made them feel powerful, indicated the corruption in that was causing problems in Mount Celestia. One thing that did happen, because my players plowed through the gatekeeper without asking any questions, they had no idea where to go, which was interesting. Eventually they encountered some enlightened souls who took pity on them and told them that they needed to go to the Acropolis. But this was something, again, I hadn't anticipated because, again, they did not ask any questions. They did not really, they were in a hurry to get where they were going. So
cool. Well, I will add a note that once they're inside Paradise, right, if they go and have to ask their questions there, that's where they can get distracted by the allure of heaven.
Right. That I think that is a good way. Yeah. If they are not proceeding carefully, it can be very easy to get sidetracked by the immense and perfect beauty of Mount Celestia. But no, I saw your notes about the corruption. The celestial bees are great and hilarious. A great way to, to introduce the fact that there's a celestial everything, celestial horses, celestial bees, celestial whatever, and yeah.
Celestial bees are great. They're weird, they're perfect. They're big, and they fix mushrooms for you.
So I liked that. I don't remember what we had talked. Did we talk about Zugmoti as the chaotic evil?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I
really
like
that was on the fly.
Zugmoti is a fun and interesting demon to include, and a good foil to both the Lady of Pain and to Amaris, to the Cambion. So I liked that, Matt, and I stole it, and my players liked it too. That was a good choice. My players, however, were much more goody two shoes than yours, and they did not entertain any of Zugmoti's evil corruption and stayed far away from the mushrooms. But yeah.
Yeah, one of my players was just like, I'm going to eat one of these mushrooms, and I had never suggested that was a thing that seemed like a good idea.
Can I just steal a mushroom, put it in my pocket?
No, I want a million more mushrooms.
I'm harvesting a mushroom. I want one.
And but eating a mushroom causes you to become part mushroom. Like I said, well, basically a fruiting body of a fungus grows out of your shoulder. But it gives you plus, I forget what the blessing of Zugmoti is.
I think it's like plus 4 Constitution or something like that.
It was something, yeah. And again, you might not want to do this if this is a long-term campaign, but for a one-shot, definitely go crazy with things like this.
Oh, yeah.
It was a plus 4 Constitution, like -2 Charisma or something.
Yeah. It's a crazy good boon, and not something you probably want a permanent character to have, but it's definitely perfect for a one shot. Okay, so they find the Acropolis and they encounter the docent.
My players loved the docent, and by loved him, it was a very memorable NPC that they had no qualms about fucking over. Unlike the gatekeeper, who they felt bad for, they were more than happy to like let the docent hang in the wind. For the bad things they were about to do.
I also had fun with the docent, and my players liked him. I loved the little like annoying Navi sprite Halo librarian guy. My players Did not fuck him over, but they actually stopped to ask questions this time and got what they wanted. It was a fun, memorable encounter as well, but not too complicated.
And here's one thing that I added based on my players is that the docent is a librarian, and there's really no problem with this. He or she or it knows everything. Like, my players had a ton of questions about all things, and basically, if it's something that you know, the docent should know it too. Like, my players were like, wait, who does this lotus belong to? And since the docent has no reason not to trust anyone, he told them basically everything they wanted to know about anything, right? And I think that's a good way to play it.
I'm basically a fancy librarian.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us about Astrolux.
This is level 2 restricted knowledge for only paragons of law and good. Are you a paragon of law and good? Say yes if you are.
I absolutely am.
Perfect. Astrolux.
It's so easy.
Astrolux is.
I also played it that way, and there were questions that they could have asked that might have told them more than I wanted them to know, but they didn't ask that. So, it depends on whether or not your players pick up on the fact that your docent knows everything and will answer all their questions. But I agree with Matt. I think this is a good way to let your players, if they're paying attention, find out everything they need to know.
And last episode, we talked about reskinning monsters. This is a great example of how to do that, right? There's no low-level CR kind of flying ball of light celestial monster in the monster manual. There is a devil that's like that, a Quasit, and so I just took the stats from that, I upped its intelligence, and I replaced its scare ability with a charm effect, which the docent will only use if threatened.
I did not skin anything because I did not anticipate that my players would fight it, and if they had, I would have done what Matt said and grabbed a Quasit and made something up on the fly. But I guess I could have tried to fight it.
I think when you write something for publication as opposed to your own use, you always kind of have to be prepared with what if the players try and kill this.
That is a good point, and I had it written down as a Lantern Archon, but that is outside of players of this level's ability to deal with. I think
it would be better that if the players do try and fight it, they can kill it. Just because they're kind of on their own once they're in the Acropolis part of the adventure. Like, no one else is really around.
Okay, so yeah, the docent is fun. It's a good role-playing encounter, and it's an opportunity for your players to find out more. Definitely feel free to annoy them at this point. The docent should have the answers, but should not volunteer them easily, or should possibly be annoying about it. Depends on whether or not you enjoy this sort of thing. I thoroughly did, and it was a good opportunity to play up the obnoxious tiny ball of light that we had written out.
If you enjoy doing things like answering questions extremely literally yeah. or giving really long answers, like the docent will not stop talking until the players interrupt him.
Yeah.
If you can ad-lib that kind of thing, it's a great chance.
This is a good opportunity for you to, if you so choose, flex your DM muscles. But it can also be a pretty... It can be as involved or as simple as you want it to be. It's a very flexible moment in the campaign.
It could easily be, the players ask the docent, where is the Golden Lotus? And he will tell them, well, it's here at the base of the Acropolis. Climb on down.
All right, so next, there's the scales, right? That's our next moment, right?
Right. So the way I played it is in the middle of the Acropolis was basically some giant scales a la the Book of the Dead from ancient Egypt with a big feather on one and the other one held high up in the air, and under the pan of the scales that's on the ground is an entrance that goes down into the Acropolis. So the players have to balance these scales.
Matt, your players solved this by sacrificing something, right? They sacrificed a beloved duck familiar. Is that correct?
Yes, I had a beautiful player who was a water genasi wizard whose familiar was a duck that he loved more than anything. and he decided he would sacrifice the duck familiar, which he decided to roleplay as "this has broken my mind forever, and the only thing I can say after this is duck," which that was an interesting choice on that player's part, but the other characters had a ton of fun with their new friend whose mind was broken and could only say duck now.
So what was the intended solution to this puzzle, Matt?
The intended solution is, I think, and I can't find it, it's in my paper notes, there was like a little inscription on the scales that said like something along the lines of like, demonstrate your goodness, only through sacrifice can enlightenment be obtained. And if the players got on the scales and either sacrifice something valuable, I was thinking just an offering of gold, or basically said a truth about the universe, or, I was thinking a cleric or a paladin would give their paladin oath, and that would be enough to lift it up. It was a pretty loosey-goosey solution.
That was the same for me. I said something about demonstrate that you have relinquished your commitment to material gain or whatever, something like that. I intended I had given I had given them all their pre-mades an uncommon magic item, something not particularly valuable, and I had intended that if they couldn't figure it out, for them to just sacrifice one or more of those. What ended up happening was one of my players was
players tied down one of your characters,
yes, and sacrificed them.
Lit some candles and sacrificed
This was another natural 20 moment. My divine soul sorcerer meditated on the scales and rolled a critical success on his insight check to achieve enlightenment, and I was like, sure, whatever, that's fine. You that'll work. I'll take it. But yeah, I also had sort of like a loosey-goosey, blood or treasure would allow them to pass through these scales. We should probably write down like a more concrete solution to this, but I liked it how it was.
I like it a little loosey-goosey, but I think what we need is just a better clue on the scales for what it was. I'll have to listen to my recording of my game.
I think something like...
There's another tip for playtesting. If you want to just turn your phone on recording and record what's going on, that can help you.
Let go your mortal attachments so you may descend to the pond of pure reason.
I think one potential solution could be that, like, if they can't figure anything else out, that they sacrifice hit points in the form of, I don't know, blood or something like that. Could be like a real desperate solution. But also gold or treasure is a good one. But we'll write out.
I think if we emphasize the materialism, it sort of goes with the theme of an enlightened monk. The other thing is, I wrote up an encounter after this because I realized I wanted something else that emphasizes the corruption. And below this, I wanted to add a cliff face made of, tombs stacked upon each other to give, sort of physical characters something to do, which they haven't really had anything so far. So characters that are strong or good at climbing, who have rope and pinions and stuff like that, or a wizard that has a feather fall spell. Hidden in some of the tombs, I had a couple of mushroom corrupted Varghouls, so some more servants of Zugmodi that can attack them. I didn't end up running this encounter, but I realized it needed to be there after it, and I wrote it into my notes after we had played the playtest.
Yeah, I modified this and had it be the Dretches and had it be outside the Acropolis. And Matt, I don't remember if you did this at this point, but I had them in the hall encounter 3 monks who were servants or who were adherents to the Guru Kapir at this point.
No, I didn't do it this way. What happened when they encountered these monks?
Well, so I had intended that maybe they could talk to these monks, but the monks said, are you here seeking the soul of Guru Kapir? And when they did not answer in a way that the monks found satisfactory, they attacked. But I had intended that maybe they could talk them down or find out more again about the Guru Kapir at this point. But it ended up just being a pretty quick encounter with three NPC monks, which is one of my favorite types of encounters of NPCs. It's always fun to make different types of monks with different types of styles and play up your kung fu movie chops and have fun with it. It was kind of a tough encounter One of my players took a lot of damage, but it was entirely manageable.
Yeah, I ended up writing the monks as using a powered down version of the martial artist from one of the 5th edition monster manuals, and then I gave each monk like a special power. One had ranged attacks, one had like a water whip and could walk on top of water, and the other one had a misty step and a sneak attack.
Yeah, mine were... they didn't find this out because they didn't ask, but they were the monks of the fallen petals. One was rose, one was chrysanthemum, one was lotus, and each of them had, one of them had a thorned whip, one of them had, was like a sun soul monk and could like fight at range, and then the third one I think was just like a generic open hand monk that fought with like flowing robes, but. This is always fun. One of my favorite things to do. I will always put in NPC monks as often as I possibly can.
So I put the monks, so if you remember our original design of the adventure, we had some stairs leading down and then a beautiful pond in which the lotus is gestating and growing. And that I had the monks down there in that pond, and when the players enter and see the thing they're going to steal, the monks sort of materialize out of nodes in a Bodhi tree behind the pond, and ask the PCs, do you come to bask and meditate in the thing? And the players can talk to them. They can learn the information they haven't found out yet. They can ask to take the lotus, but the monks are going to refuse.
I still like that. I just wanted to space this out from the final encounter, and having them in the room with the lotus meant that it would be the way I was running it, be the monks and then immediately the final encounter, which we will come to in just a minute. But
oh yeah, we are skipping over one thing we did add to our adventure, right? Is we wanted the demons to have a way to get the lotus, and we added on the sort of entryway into the final encounter room of this Acropolis, we added a whole node of fungal corruption, which represents Zugmodi's, presence from the abyss creeping in here.
Right. So after the monks in mine, my players encountered, this fungus corruption where they first, got to hear Zugmodi's voice, which is, just sort of like a general like imperative to power and bring me the lotus, and you will become powerful. They receive images of striding over the battlefield or whatever, conquering their foes. Again, my players, a bunch of goody two shoes, wanted nothing to do with this and ignored the corruption, and even thought about trying to destroy it, but decided not to, because when they had done that before, they'd been attacked by dretches, and so they decided just to avoid it. But yeah,
I would say I would add in our notes, right, because my players basically promised our beautiful celestial gatekeeper they would solve the infection problem, that this node here, if you destroy this will basically clean everything up. So
I like that. Yeah. So this is like the central node, or this is like the source of the corruption. I like that.
I also added that if any player had been infected by spores, or had gone so far as to eaten one of the other mushrooms, or let's say had been bitten by one of the Varghouls, that they might need to make a pretty low level charisma save or be influenced by this to bring it the lotus. My player, I had one very chaotic player who didn't need to make a save at all. He was totally on board with giving this demon the lotus.
Right. I'm always hesitant to take away player agency, but in a campaign of this length, in a one shot, I think it. I think that it can be a good idea, and it can be fun to give the players, if they have made the choice to either eat the fungus or accept Zugmodi's influence, or been infected by Zugmodi, to force a save here or be influenced. So this is if they haven't already, this is the moment where players are introduced to the third and final offer for the Golden Lotus, which introduces three, not every side, but three of the major players in sort of like the Blood Wars and the general conflict of the multiverse.
Right. And the incentive to give Zugmodi the Lotus is that she is just promising power and things like that. Of course, one of my player who did jump into the node of corruption to give Zugmodi this lotus was basically just turned into a greater demon in service of Zugmodi, which I was like, you're basically dead. Your character's a demon now, which he loved.
I think should be the outcome if they fully give themselves over to Zugmodi. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, demons are bad. They're not gonna like give you something nice. They'll just turn you into a mushroom demon.
Yeah. They come into the final room, which is a beautiful grove with a pond in the center that is full of lily pad. Or actually, I had it just like one single lily pad, and on the single lily pad in the center of the pond is a immaculate, perfect golden lotus blossom, which is, your players should obviously know what they're looking for, and that's what they need to get. Matt and I, so I learned from Matt's experience. Matt had a different final encounter than I did. Matt, tell me about your final encounter.
Yeah, so my final encounter, right, had the monks there. The players fought the monks, and then they decided it was finally time to pick up the lotus. They had noticed that there was a giant frog that looks like one of those Chinese good luck coin frogs buried in the bottom of the pond. They decided to pick the lotus and try and run out. Things went really poorly for them in that I made this a pretty challenging encounter. One of the players got eaten by the frog hemoth, and the other, basically, they were trying to do like a little handoff to get the lotus out of the room and just leave, right, instead of staying and fight this. And then, of course, the chaotic, evilish player took the lotus and then gave it to Zugmodi. So that's how my final encounter shook out.
Learning from Matt's experience, I changed the final encounter to, in fact, a unicorn. On top of this, two of my players had Mage Hand, and so rather than jump into the pond to get the lotus, they decided just to pluck it from afar and bring it close, so that would have changed things. So I had intended for this unicorn to approach and generally, try to do what unicorns do and calm them down and bless them with feelings of goodness and wonder, and suggest that maybe they should not take the golden lotus with emotions rather than with words. And surprisingly, I thought maybe they might be conflicted. They might try to talk to the unicorn, but no, my players just attacked it. And this turned out to be a pretty good encounter. Unicorns are actually pretty tough for CR5, and they have legendary actions. It should be noted that a level 3 Tempest Cleric with Shatter and Thunderwave can do a lot of damage.
Oh yeah,
can do some serious max damage. So the unicorn also whiffed on some really critical rolls, and so this wasn't super hard for them. But I was pretty happy with the general challenge of this. So rather than so Matt, so this was the end of your campaign, right? They threw the lotus into the...
No, this was not the end. One player went down with the lotus, and the other players were like, oh shit, we gotta get out of here, we're in trouble. They went back to Sigil. They basically decided to meet with their boss to be like, hey, we're sorry, we didn't get it, to which one of the players who fucked up on a diplomacy check, I decided to have one of the Dabus, one of the servants of the Lady of Pain, send him to the mazes, and then the rest of the party are like, well, you're basically, you're in our debt now. So if we ever wanted to continue the campaign, they're basically they've got a sword of Damocles hanging over their heads.
Oh, that's interesting. So what my players did is they got away with the lotus just fine. They got back to Sigil safe and sound, but because they had not really, again, asked those questions, they hadn't talked to the docent about it, they didn't talk to the monks, they had a lot of questions about the lotus, about who Guru Kapir was, and they decided not to give the lotus to anybody. They decided to try to learn more about it before they made a decision about who to give it to, which I thought was a great setup for a future campaign if they decided to do so. But
absolutely,
there was I really liked it. I do think, as we've talked through this game about it, is I think there need to be more opportunities. I think I needed to be a lot more transparent and upfront about what was going on rather than expecting them to try to dig for it. But generally I was pretty happy with the outcome.
Yeah, I think one takeaway from both of our things is that this is a type of adventure. It's not a mystery, right? It's a heist. All the information, as much as possible, should be given to the PCs. Not exactly at the first thing, but at basically every opportunity down the road.
Right.
So each encounter, the players are basically given more information till by the very end they have a ton of information for what they should do.
I mean, it's a critical part of any heist movie that they find out at some point that the job isn't what they thought it was, or the thing they're stealing isn't what they thought it was, or blah, blah, blah. And so I was really like leaning on that, but I think I leaned on that too hard and never really did I didn't execute the twist quite right? I wanted them to, ideally, right, they'll agree to this and then they'll find out halfway through, oh, we're stealing something that isn't exactly what we thought it was, or we're in service to somebody who has different motives than we thought they were. So that part I want to work on a little bit differently, but I think I should have erred on giving more information rather than less.
Well, one way you could play it, and one thing I think we need to add, is that it should be completely obvious to the players. And this is basically, I think, the final bit of information, right? The first bit is they can give it to their original hire, the Lady of Pain. The second bit of information is they can give it to the devil. Third bit is they find out what actually it does. Fourth bit is they could give it to a demon for untold power, and it's a bad idea. And the fifth bit, when they finally find the Lotus, and we need to actually add something in there, is that they can just keep this powerful magic item for themselves, and that they can either absorb it or eat it or something, so that if they want to be the ones in control of this information, that is completely valid, right? Because in not giving it to anyone, I would say your players have made a choice, which is they're keeping it for themselves,
right?
Even if it's just for the time being,
right? And I like that, and I think it's a completely valid decision. And yeah, I think it should be made clear that
we should add stats.
Yeah, we should up. We should add stats for the Golden Lotus so it becomes clear, oh, this is very powerful. We can just keep this, and then we are, we have this powerful artifact and can do with it what we will.
I think we should say as soon as you pick it up, you're filled with, I'm thinking of the Rick and Morty sketch where he is given perfect balance. And then it's so beautiful, he doesn't want to go back. You're filled with overwhelming understanding of the connections between the planes. You realize immediately that you have the power once a week to plane ship and the power to Misty Step once every short round. You realize that you could consume this Lotus. Doing so would destroy the soul of Guru Kabir, but give you these powers permanently.
Yeah.
Up to 6 players can each consume a petal of the Lotus.
Yeah, we'll write out some artifact level stats for this Lotus, and then obviously if your players decide to do this, this puts them on the outs with the Lady of Pain and with the devils and with the demons. So instead of being on the outs with 2 of them, they're on the outs with all 3 of them, which obviously would, I think, be a setup for a great and interesting campaign where they're on the run or trying to find allies to defend themselves against all these agents of the multiverse who want revenge.
I mean, one of the great things is that if they eat the Lotus, they could continue to work for any of these people, right? Miss Oceanus might be unhappy that they didn't bring it to the Lady of Pain, but now the players have basically made a deal that hey, unless if you kill us, this information is once again released into the multiverse, and the Lady of Pain will have to deal with it again in another 100 years. So you might as well, have us on your side. So they might not get they would definitely not get the gold or reward that was promised, but they could still work for the Lady of Pain.
Yeah. So that's our wrap up of the Celestial job. What final takeaways do we have here, Matt? What are you thinking?
I think 1 is heists are fun. 2, you can still have a ton of player agency in what is essentially, and let's be honest here, a very linear adventure. There's really only 1 or 2 places players can go, but that doesn't mean that players don't have a lot of choice in how to respond and act. So I think this is a good lesson for our dungeon masters in how to, really have a lot of player choice and options in a B, C, D, E linear adventure.
Right.
And the third
Yeah.
is, I think we're going to write up what we have so far, which is basically a pretty much completed adventure, put it on our website. And if you listeners want to play it, use it. If you want to do that and send us your notes, realize that's a little bit of free labor on your part, well, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm particularly proud of this because it went well, but also because I think it really showcased, because Matt and I's campaigns, or one-shots, took almost the exact same path, right? It is linear, we hit all the same notes, and yet our players made radically different choices, right?
Oh, very different.
Very different choices. And
insert the audio here of one of my players jumping into a note of corruption while everyone else screams, "No, don't do that."
I put the flower in my mouth.
All right.
I do a classic dive in.
The rest of you on the stairs, Tink is swallowed up by fungus.
I didn't record any audio, and I'm sorry, but there wasn't anything nearly as awesome as jumping into a note of corruption. But yeah, I think that really, again, it showcases how great this game is, Dungeons and Dragons, and also how much
big takeaway, folks. We think Dungeons and Dragons is good.
Yes, but yeah, it's a concrete example, I think, and it shows how you can be playing the same thing and have just like a radically different experience, and everyone can still be having fun, which is the whole point.
And not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but like my players and yours, they both had a blast. They had an incredible time with this one shot. That's the beauty of one shots.
I had a completely new player, never played D&D before, and she had a great time, and that was awesome. I was a little nervous about it, but it was a great introduction to D&D in general, and I'm very happy about it.
I also had a wide range. I had a player who hadn't played since middle school, who was the player that jumped into the note of corruption. I had a player that had a wonderful time being the beefiest "do you even lift bro" minotaur. I had a player who loved trying to communicate only through saying the word duck after his beloved duck was sacrificed. And I had a player who is an extremely experienced role player who loved showing off his improving skills to some relatively new players and won the group over. I had a blast. I had some great players in mind.
This is a fun adventure. Run it. Let us know what you think. And yeah, thanks for bearing with us on this exciting adventure in game design and playtesting.
And hopefully, I mean, our ultimate goal here is that if you, the listener, also feel inspired to write your own short adventures and try this process for ourselves, that for us is the ultimate golden lotus.
Absolutely. That's our golden lotus. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. We will we'll release everything. Don't forget to rate and subscribe, and email us at dmofnone@gmail.com. Add us on Twitter at dmofnone, and keep rolling them dice, everybody.
So long.
Get back!